joining us, Natalie Rowe. Now, we know Natalie, frankly, you're a very controversial character at this moment in time. You've got enough people on your case. I actually had a good look at your mobile phone earlier and I can see the kind of people who are contacting you. So I'm really grateful that you've joined us to put a few things straight, because obviously there's a lot of myths floating around about you. A lot of stereotype imagery that's going on about you, and you have joined us here, and I'm grateful you've joined us here, because the whole point about the People's Voice is to get behind the headlines and be real. And you and I now know we've had a decent conversation off camera, and we both know that we are two women who want to be real.
Absolutely.
Then let's do it, okay? If you can give us a little bit of your history, please. As far as I can see, let's kick off about this escort agency, which obviously people have been talking about. You had your own escort agency called Black Beauties in the 1990s.
Yeah, that's correct.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, initially I was working for an escort agency, and they said that there wasn't much people asking for black girls. Right. At some point I realised that wasn't true. Right. To cut a long story short, I decided that I'd set up my own agency that to
fill a gap in the market.
Yeah, absolutely, and there was a big gap, and I did fill it.
Right.
Literally.
Love it. So you set up that agency, and was the aim to have to be sort of a high class escort agency? Was that the aim?
Well, to be honest with you, the first. I actually thought that it would be a very small cottage industry, sort of a couple of girls. Right. But then the demand for black girls was actually a surprise to me. Right. And so as the demand became bigger, I had to then employ more girls. Right. So from our chat earlier, there was this whole thing of trying to get Naomi Campbell lookalikes. That's not quite true. Right, go on. I had varied types of girls. Right. It was when a certain type of people, i.e. Osborne and the Poulton boys, who I'd met through my son's father, William Sinclair, they were fixated on this Naomi Campbell lookalike. Really? And so I had girls that had the same figure, but didn't necessarily look like Naomi Campbell, but they were as good. I mean, some girls were actually models. Right. So, but because I think they were pretty unexperienced when it came to black girls, the first thing that came to their mind was, can we have one that looks like Naomi Campbell? Oh, I see. I see. I'm with you. I'm with you. So, look, seeing as you've cut to the chase, you've gone straight to the Poulton boys, which is fine, because I am a woman who's quite happy to go straight for the juggler. Right. So you and I are singing from the same sheet on this. Okay. So tell me about the Poulton boys. Let's just go quite naturally. Tell me the first thing off the top of your head. Well, first of all, I've only sent the girls that worked for me, and I'm going to be clear, they were prostitutes. Right. I only sent them on one occasion in 1994 to the Poulton Club. Right. I'd sat down with Christopher Coleridge, George Osborne, and William Sinclair, who's the father of my son, who had described the kind of girls they wanted me to send. Right. And I was A, to supply the girls, and B, to supply the cocaine. Right. I sat with all three of them, George, William, Christopher, and discussed what kind of type of girls, how much drugs they wanted, and they described what kind of girls they wanted, i.e. this Naomi Campbell lookalike. Right. What they meant was they didn't want anyone fat. Right. They wanted tall, slim. Right. And I think in those days, Naomi Campbell was somebody that the only black girl that she was a goddess. Absolutely. And I think if they could have had Naomi, they would have done, but clearly they couldn't. So, but my girls were pretty good looking, and I sent 3 girls that, came close. But they didn't look like her. They just, they wanted something as beautiful. Right, okay. That's what I said. Now, I'd like to draw on some little evidence here. I'm sure many people have seen this picture. This is currently being pulled off at the internet at a rate of knots. Natalie has kindly brought this along to share with us today. So, obviously this is a picture that is subject to a great deal of speculation, and I'm not sure why. Well, I know, because the evidence is there. Exactly. So, could you please tell us the truth about this picture once and for all? Absolutely. Because, like you, I am sick of the myths that surround this. Go for it. Okay. This is absolutely going to be an exclusive. This isn't actually an exclusive. It's just that papers have known about what I'm about to say to you now since 2005, but for some reason they either daren't print it or they're being bullied by, and I know for a fact that Osborne's, henchmen called lawyers tend to try and put the heat on a lot of the papers, which I'm very disappointed about. When I thought that, we live in a society where we had freedom of speech, but we've got a government right now that's literally trying to censor every single thing that comes out that is against them or about them or doesn't help them in any way. That photograph there, the reason why the flowers are in my face, number one, is because the drug dealer that was there on the night, who was taking the photo, I actually thought, I said to him, be careful, we don't want to have the cocaine in the actual picture. So I actually moved the vase, thinking it would actually hide the coke. Clearly it didn't. And that's why I got the flowers in my face. It isn't just a line, but it's a few lines. It's probably about a gram, something, of cocaine there, of which George Osborne took on that night and prior to that night, regularly, in my company and others. Right.
Because there's obviously doctored pictures of this.
Doctored? What do you mean by doctored?
Well, the lines have been cut out.
Oh, News World did that.
Yes.
I think they did that in their edition, I'm not sure.
Did they? Well, that's interesting because obviously
I'm not sure about that, but I think some people lately, they decided to cut that bit of the picture out. Clearly Osborne's got a little part to play in that.
Yes.
And Cameron.
Right. Okay, well it's interesting because, as I say, there have been lots of myths about that particular picture.
Right.
And there has been the, is it, isn't it? Well, the truth is...
It's not flour.
It's not flour. And so, so thank you for clarifying that.
Absolutely.
Because,
100%,
it's time to, isn't it?
I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's coke. It's not on the table for any other... white powder on the table. Another thing, the reason why there's a bit of long white paper there that's unravelling...
Yes.
...is because William used to nosebleed. So when we used to use the notes to snort, the boys, especially George in particular, and Christopher, they didn't like the idea because William would nosebleed, so it would bleed when he snorted on the money. So what we did then, as is in the picture, we rolled up a piece of white paper, so you can see that next to the coke. Yes. And that's why it's not a note anymore, because he kept on bleeding, nose bleeding. I don't really want to talk about his son's father too much, but that's the reason why it's an unraveling piece of rolled up paper.
I hear you. I mean, it's very insightful what you say. When I said to people, we're going to have Natalie Rowe on, she's going to be my first guest. And some people said to me, isn't that a bit sensational?
Really?
Well, yes, because you know how some people are. But as far as I'm concerned...
What do they mean by that?
Well, because they think we're just going for a kind of, a tabloid headline. But clearly we're not. Because
we're not.
We're having a decent, proper conversation that human beings are allowed to in an uncensored environment.
Well, if George had his way, and hopefully we'll get to that at some point today.
Yes.
Nobody would be talking about him at all to do with his past murky life.
Right. I hear you. So, what I want to also look at is what's happened to you recently.
Okay.
You talked about the book. It's an unashamed plug because, the lady has actually come in despite all manner of different obstacles that she's encountering at this moment in time. And I, for one, actually applaud her guts.
Okay.
No, not at all. So I'm quite happy to give that
a little... Chief Whip.
Yeah, Chief Whip indeed.
Memoirs of a Dominatrix.
I thought that the title was hilarious. Yeah. So let's look at that. When you started to talk about that publicly recently, okay, I read that you then subsequently experienced a dawn raid by drug officers, ramming your home.
Well, they didn't actually ram the door.
Yeah, of course, obviously not.
They would have
vehicle.
done had I not opened it up.
Yes.
I mean, it was
Were you asleep?
Unbelievable. I think I'd woken up because I've got a pet and I was feeding him, and I went back to bed, had the radio on LBC, I love to listen to that in the mornings.
Right.
And I heard a knock on the door, and when I looked through the peephole, there was a person dressed as, well, I now know it was a police officer, but he was dressed as a postman.
Right.
And
dressed as a postman?
He was dressed as a postman.
Okay.
And he said he had a delivery for Natalie Rowe. Well, Natalie Rowe isn't actually my real name, and I wouldn't normally get a delivery in that name.
Right.
So I was suspicious. But I'd had a visit the night before from a journalist from the Mail on Sunday.
Right.
So I thought it was another journalist trying to, speak to me. So I said to him, leave it on the doorstep and I'll come out and get it. And he put it on the floor, and I could see through the people. But I thought, well, the postman wouldn't do that because you've got to sign for it.
Right.
But he did actually look past and pretend that he was reading. I said, who's it for? He said, N. Rowe. And he then went round the corner. I could still see he hadn't gone out the actual building. And so I opened it with my chain on and said, so you can take the pass with you. I can't remember if I said I don't believe you're a postman, but I said, take it with you. And I shut the door. And as I shut the door, just as I shut the door, I looked at people again and saw just a rush of black figures, and it was open the door, drug squad. And I had a top on and my knickers, and I said, can I just put my skirt on? And they said no, and open it now, otherwise we're going to break the door in. So I literally had to open the door at that instant.
Were you not petrified?
Absolutely in shock.
Yeah.
Drug squad.
Yeah.
You know, maybe. You know, if it be something other like, you know, I don't know what, a drug squad was the last thing that I would have expected the police to be at my door for.
Right.
Don't do drugs,
right.
Don't do drugs, don't take drugs, don't sell drugs, nothing. Past is the past. Of course I indulged then,
right.
especially with Osborne, but I don't do it anymore.
And also I think I read actually that you said that they asked you about your book.
Well, what happened was that one of the officers, the lead officer, you know, the one that signed the documents after the papers to leave with you, I said to him, why would I be selling drugs? Right. Why would you? Right. What is this? And trying to remember how it all went. He said, why didn't you open the door immediately? And I said, because I thought you were a journalist. And he said, why would you think it was a journalist? I said, because there was a journalist here yesterday. Right. And then he said, oh, was it to do with your memoirs? Uh-huh. And I said, why? And I didn't want to get into that. Suddenly the alarm bell started ringing. Right. And I said, well, why would you say memoirs and not non-fiction or something? And I said, and also, why have you got sort of 10 officers when you could just have brought a sniffer dog, made this very quick and swift? And he said, because of government cuts. And I just thought, I'm being wound up here.
Wow.
Okay. And actually, can I say something?
Yes, of course.
It would have been cheaper to use a dog than 12 officers in anyone's book.
Good sniffer dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Than 12 officers, you know, wasting people's money, taxpayers' money, knowing there isn't any drugs there. Right. And where did they get the information from?
So what did you deduce from that?
Well, apparently what he said was a tip-off from the public. In that case, Sonia, then I should call up the police tomorrow for anyone that I've got a grievance against and say, actually, they're selling drugs, and see how quick they're going to go around there and threaten to break their door in and upheave their whole house. They also locked me in my living room. Yes. I couldn't see what they were doing anywhere in my apartment. I asked if I could call my lawyer. I was told no. Right. I asked if I could have a friend to witness them searching the rest of my apartment because I wanted to see what they were doing. Yes. I thought they could plant something. These were all my legal rights that was denied, and that's why I'm not going to let it go. Right.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for clarifying that as well, because obviously when you read these reports, it's difficult to know. I mean, I've worked in mainstream media for an awful long time. Right. I know how things run. I know how spin happens. I know how a story, sometimes, facts, they won't allow facts to get in the way of a good story. I know how that all exists. So it's really wonderful to be able to have it from the horse's mouth, as it were. Really important. And I thank you for speaking so openly and honestly. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about this book. Okay. You refer to a character called Joe in there. Right. Who is Joe?
Well, it's not Boris Johnson from what people have been saying.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I want to reveal that today. Okay. Do you think do you want to have it exclusive?
I would like to know. Yes, I'd love to know
Joe
who Joe is.
George.
George Osborne.
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell me?
And can I also say, I never said at any point, which I've read in the papers, when the day that Sunday People printed the story of the serialisation. Yeah. I didn't say that Joe was not George Osborne. Right. And my publishers got involved with that and their lawyers. Right. And it's bloody annoying. Right. I didn't want to change any of the names in the book. Right. It was taken out of my control.
Who took that out of your control?
But my publisher, and it was also my agent, did that. Right. For their legal reasons. But I'm on record now. First of all, I will give a list, either a bit through a blog or through a newspaper or through you, of the real names of every single person in this book. Right. Joe is George Osborne.
I mean, and there are other names, obviously, that have been muted.
Bankers, politicians, directors of very major companies. And I want the public to know who was running this country. I'll give you an example. There's a guy in the book, I think he's under the name JB, I'm not too sure because I didn't change the names myself.
Right.
His real name is JR, which stood for John Robson. John Robson. He worked for Lloyd's of London, in Lloyd's of London. This is the guy that was running millions of pounds of people's money, hard-earned cash that they invested, who would call me. It's unbelievable, but he would call me and I'd say, what are you doing? Or I'd call him, get through to speak to him. He would be smoking a crack pipe in his office with my stockings and suspenders under his trousers at work.
Right. Now, obviously, I haven't been able to put these accusations to him.
And furthermore, I've got to make it quite clear. I would not say these names if I didn't have the evidence. Their phone numbers, the phone records, everything. I'm quite happy. If anyone wants to investigate me or take me to court, I am not a stupid person. I'm not going to mention anybody unless I have the complete 100% evidence.
Well, what I'd just like to say...
And that's a banker.
Well, what I'd just like to say, because it's really important, because one of my things about actually working on the people's voice is that we are not going to libel anybody unless we know for certain. Now, obviously, I don't know this, so this is what you're alleging at this moment in time, but I would like to take the opportunity to say at this moment in time, an absolute public appeal that anybody's names who might slip out of this wonderful woman's mouth next to me today, if we are offering you the right to reply, if you want to say that as an absolute outrage and it's scandalous, you can come and sit next to me and we can rap as well. Just
so you're talking about the actual person
now.
I've mentioned?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, go ahead. There are lots of John Robsons there.
Yes.
Well, but you know, the bottom line is he knows who he is. In fact, everyone in this book knows who they are.
Right.
And this is not, I'm not trying to out people.
Right.
I'm trying to let the public know exactly what is going on with people in the establishment that run, that are using your money, playing with your money, the government, and they know they are, you know, the two Tweedledum and Tweedledees. The fact of the matter is these people were using my services, and first of all, I'm not the only girl that has these people, that had these kind of guys using their services. It's still happening
And there's the pillow talk, obviously. You know, we had it all with Christine Keeler back in the 60s, that whole issue there, and it is still happening now. But, you know, one of the things that strikes me, you know, it's really easy to dismiss somebody with your history, isn't it? And they've given it a good shot, haven't they, though? You know, this is what we were talking about earlier. Yeah. You know, because it's like, okay, well, it's so easy to discredit you.
Why me?
I know, but just because of your involvement in an escort agency, and they'll play on that.
There's Heidi Fleiss.
Right.
There's the lady that wrote Belle de Jour. Right. Why are they sort of glamorised and yet I'm vilified?
Right.
I think there are lots of reasons behind it. I'm going to use the race card here.
Right.
That if I'd been blonde and blue-eyed, I think there'd be a different perspective about me. Right. I don't think the establishment expected someone like me, a Yorkshire girl, black to boot, to have been able to control and have those kind of guys in my power, and I did. Right. They were on all fours, getting spanked. I controlled them. I knew all the inner secrets. A couple of them were gay. Right now, I won't tell you what they're...
Obviously, you can't tell us any names at this moment,
right? I mean, the fact of the matter is, you get all this, they were worried about their wives knowing this, and I'd set them up with boys, black boys generally. The fact of the matter is, they're liars and hypocrites. I think what the establishment are embarrassed about now is that as a black woman, they don't want to be social. It's like, eat with you, but won't with you.
Right, I hear you, and definitely not publicly, yeah?
No, and so they're embarrassed by it. I mean, I'm not saying the whole media's embarrassed by it. I'm not palatable for them for some reason.
I mean, there's so much hypocrisy, isn't there? It's like, obviously the co-op chairman, we've seen all the hypocrisy there, Reverend. Huge volume
of hypocrisy. Not a surprise to me.
I'm sure,
many of them
I'm sure it is no surprise to you whatsoever.
He's just been caught.
Right, okay. Now, so sorry, I'm just fiddling around with, look, this happens on live TV. These kind of things happen all the time. So I want to talk also about some phone hacking, because that's a very, very serious charge that you've been making about phone hacking.
Well, I haven't. It's official. Police wrote to me and told
tell
me
about it.
Charge.
Tell me about it, because obviously it's a very serious issue what's been going on with the News of the World phone hacking. Yeah. So, and when I said to you earlier, yes, didn't you refer to yourself as Miss Whiplash and Miss Penn? You were like, I didn't refer to myself like that, and that then led us into a conversation.
Right.
So can you please share that?
Right. I've never called myself Mistress Payne or Miss Whiplash. That was manufactured by the News of the World. I never gave the story to News of the World. The story was given to the Sunday Mirror. Max Clifford had fallen out with this. I had a dispute with the News of the World for some reason. I don't know if that was the entire reason why they then stole the story on the same day. A journalist, Sarah Newar, knocked on my door on the Saturday morning from the News of the World, wanting to do the story with me, and said that they would pay me any amount of money that I wanted. But I'd already signed an agreement through Max Clifford with the Sunday Mirror, so I couldn't have gone with them anyway. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. So the story that came out on the Sunday was never given to the News of the World.
Right.
It was only ever given to the Sunday Mirror.
But you believe your phone was hacked?
Oh, I know it was hacked. And also, it's quite coincidental that the News of the World knew that I was doing that story that weekend. She came on the Saturday knowing that the story was coming out on the Sunday. How would she know that?
Right.
No one told them that.
Right.
The love of Sunday Mirror wasn't going to do it.
Right.
And also, I'd spoken to George Osborne a couple of days prior to the story coming out.
Right.
I was with a journalist, Susie Boniface, who had written a few things on a piece of paper questions I should ask George.
Right.
I'm going to fast forward a bit and then explain it to you
Go
properly. But on the Monday, in the Times, Osborne claims that I'd called him.
Right.
And that he hadn't fallen for the honey trap.
And had you called him?
No, I hadn't. He called me. I think it was the Thursday or the Friday prior to the story.
And he called you to say what?
Well, I'd actually called his secretary and told her that I need to speak to George.
Right.
And then she got him, and he then called me.
Right.
And Susie and I, we taped the conversation, by the way.
Right.
She had a dictaphone and I had a earpiece.
Right.
And it was basically, I had to explain to him, he'll be loving this now for his lawyers.
Yes. Indeed. I should say, actually, you know...
Because it's an exclusive, he now knows we did take that conversation, Osborne.
Well, you know, I should say, just for fairness, I did actually speak with George Osborne's office today, and I did, give him the absolute right of reply.
I wasn't aware of that.
Of course, I haven't heard anything back.
Okay.
But, you know, just for fairness, because I think it's always fair that people... I thought I did mention that to you earlier. No. But I also did the same with David Cameron. It's like, is there anything you want to say?
Right.
And because I think I didn't...
But I want to clear this up. It's really important.
Yes, go on.
So George called me up.
Yes.
2 days prior to the story coming out. And what he said, so I had to ask him various questions. The long and short of all is that I told him that the journalists are outside and they want to know about you taking cocaine.
Right.
That was for him because we needed him to...
What was his response to that?
Well, the long and short was he told me to lie.
Right.
That he hadn't taken cocaine.
Our Chancellor of the Exchequer told you to lie.
Yes, he did. We needed to get on tape as well.
Right.
That's why I'm happy to see you in court, George. Any day.
Right, okay. And you've also, because I've been following some of your tweets this weekend, and so you've had a few, you know...
So can I make it quite clear that? Because I think it's really important.
Absolutely. I think
you've
established that.
George Osborne called me. I told him what was going on. He basically told me to lie about his use of cocaine.
Right.
It was just, and there was a journalist who's now called Street V Fox, I think she's now called, was there.
I hear
present.
you, absolutely, and that's your witness. Obviously, I haven't heard that tape.
Okay.
But
well, she has it.
Right, okay. But I was reading some of your tweets this weekend. You had a few choice words to say about our Prime Minister as well.
Did I?
Well, you did, actually. So I assume you didn't meet David Cameron.
No, I've never met David.
Right, you've never met David Cameron. So what was the thing you were saying on Twitter? And I'm having to paraphrase you when you were saying that one needed to stop hiding behind the other one's skirt tails.
Okay.
What did you mean by that?
I'm referring to the 1994 photograph of the boys at the Poulton Club where I sent my girls.
Right.
The prostitutes.
Right.
They've been taken out of circulation.
Right.
Never to be seen again.
Right.
Bought by somebody.
Right.
And I'm of the belief that David Cameron was there. And if he wasn't there, David, release the photos.
That's you know, because obviously about the picture, in terms of that, I mentioned in the intro, and I got that wrong. But you did actually put this picture on eBay, didn't you?
Yes,
and it was on for 4 days. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it wasn't 48 hours.
Was the starting bid 40,000?
No, I started at 50,000.
50,000.
And I had 4 bidders.
You had 4 bidders,
yes.
And then what happened?
eBay, 4 days later, I think 3 or 4 days later, decided, said that that the photos. By the way, which were never posted on eBay.
Right.
They were never seen by eBay. I didn't put the pictures up there.
Right.
Because of they do command quite a lot of money when they're syndicated.
Sure.
So I didn't want to lose its commercial value.
Sure.
So eBay hadn't even seen the photos to find them distasteful or inappropriate.
Right. And is that what they said to you, that they're distasteful and inappropriate?
I think they said they were inappropriate.
Interesting.
Because pictures they'd never even seen.
Well, you also showed me a picture earlier, which we're not going to show, but you did show me, and I can verify that you showed me. And that was that's an interesting picture, isn't it?
Right. Please don't. Wait. Yeah. I mean, you've seen it.
I've seen it.
We know what it's about. But
all right. Well, tell us a little bit about it. Just sort of share that.
Well, George Osborne claims that he's never met any of my clients or been in the same room as them, or barely knew me. This picture that I've shown you is George Osborne in the same room with one of my clients.
Right.
And I have evidence that it is a client of mine.
Right. And
the picture tells 100 stories. And the fact he's never met one of my clients, it's all in the proof of the photo. Yeah, it's there. And I've never published it before, and I had my reasons for it. Right. I wanted to see how long Osborne, how much he was going to dig himself into a hole. Right. He now knows I have the photo, and I do have the photo, and I will use it in evidence if I need to.
Right. Well, I mean, I can absolutely confirm that I've seen that photo. Thank you. You know, and that's fair enough, and I appreciate you sharing that with us as well. It must be very frustrating from your perspective.
It's more than frustrating. You know, you're getting, eBay's taken down a photo that's not inappropriate in any way, unless they're admitting that it's cocaine.
Right.
Because it can't be that George having his arm around me is inappropriate.
Right.
I think George had something to do with that. I think number 10 had something to do with that. You've also got newspapers, one particular newspaper, and I'm going to have to say it. I mean, I've been told not to talk about them, but I'm my own person and I will. It's the Mail on Sunday. I think they've been not Mail on Sunday. Take
that back.
Take that back. The Sunday Mail. The Sunday Mail have been pretty working, as far as I'm concerned, in George's favour, and are censoring a lot of stuff that should come out. They're quite happy to talk about flowers. They're not happy to talk about Osborne.
The Chancellor of the Exchequer.
The Chancellor of the Exchequer. And I now know that between the government, number 10, and I'm going to say it, as far as I get, what I've been through, the Daily Mail on Sunday, not Daily Mail, because I'm not sure what they'd get up to, the Mail on Sunday, have done some very, very dirty tactics in order to keep me quiet, and they've colluded with number 10, so far as to even tip Downing Street off when the story was coming out in the Sunday People, and their lawyers were on their case ridiculously, and they didn't buckle. The point of the matter is the editors should be there to tell the truth and not edit it for the public to read the fair and true story, no matter what party you belong to. And I think it's disgusting that you've got Tory papers now that are absolutely trying to protect the Tory party. I think their shareholders owe it. They owe it to the shareholders and they owe it to the public that are buying these papers to tell it as it is.
Right. I mean, what can I say? You've heard it straight from the horse's mouth. I mean, Natalie, I just want to say one more thing to you. Are you not scared about saying all these things?
Of what?
Well, we all know that people disappear when they come out and say things.
Do you know what? I thought about it. But you've got to remember, I knew George before he was the Chancellor. Right. And to me, he's still I'm not going to say what I want to say.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to be rude. Yeah. I want to be, but I won't be.
Yes.
George is still the George I remember from the past.
Right.
My son's father, William Sinclair, he's, look, if they want to do something to me, then I'm not going to live my life in fear.
Well, exactly. What we were talking about earlier, the whole idea, what Martin Luther King said, and that is, if you're quiet about things that are important, you are already half dead.
I'm not trying to sort of, this is not the civil rights movement. Yes. This is just me talking about some past stuff that a Chancellor and other politicians got up to.
Yes.
If it had been Boris Becker, I'm sure he'd have just held his hand up and said, yep, back in the day.
Yes.
The fact, if you keep lying and covering, and also, I feel now, abusing me publicly and by trying to restrict my voice, I feel it's abuse.
Right.
If you continue doing that, all you're doing, Osborne, is digging a hole for yourself. Right. But I'm not frightened of anybody, and never will be.
Okay. Well, what can I say? You heard it all. Natalie Rowe, thank you for joining us. Do your business. Thank you ever so much. Please take care of yourself.
You're very welcome.
We are here. If you want to update us on what's happening, we will listen live and uncensored.
I'm grateful.
Please take care of yourself. I'm grateful too. Okay, well, I have been joined again in the studio by Miss Natalie Rowe, who has returned to obviously tell us a little bit more. Natalie, thank you for joining us back in the studio. What is it you would like to share with us?
Well, I think because we sort of maybe, I don't know, I'd forgotten maybe to add this, I think it's rather important.
Go on.
Is that the girls that I sent at the time in 1994 to the Poulton club, where George and others attended, was held at Waddesdon Manor, which is the Rothschilds' estate. Right. And Nat Rothschild was the chap that hosted it on that particular event, on the Poulton event of that year. Right. And I wanted to make it quite clear that that's where the girls were sent and who was the host and where it all occurred.
Right. I mean, I hear you, and one of the reasons, which I'm going to reiterate, why we wanted you on here is because we are anti-hypocrisy. Yeah. I absolutely cannot stand, and I detest it, and it's from all world governments, and this is a global show. We invite people from all over the globe to tell us what you want covered. We are the people's voice. Natalie is here because we believe that she has something really important to say about the establishment, certainly the hypocritical way that people conduct themselves. And, you know, I do think you've got a lot of bottle to come forward. I know that people have been concerned, you know, about you and want to make sure you're okay.
I'd like to go further, if I may. I mean...
the floor is yours.
Well, I sent 3 girls, and, you know, for want of a better word, the truth of the matter is they were prostitutes. Right. I've been told in the past by journalists and the media, don't call them prostitutes, call them strippers. They weren't. Right. They were hookers, simple as. And Nat Rothschild, who's a friend of George Osborne, did partake in the pleasures of those girls' delights. Right. I know it's quite, you know, it's pretty out there for me to even come, because people say, well, you don't really want to cross those type of people. Right. I'm not frightened of any of them.
Right, well, clearly, I can tell you, this is a woman who has a lot of bottle.
And the truth is the truth. Yeah. And I want people to know it.
Well, you know, the truth is a powerful tool, isn't
Absolutely.
it? You know, and they always say, you know, you speak the truth and it sets you free.
Right, and as I hear, Nat Rothschild at the moment, isn't too fond of Osborne, George Osborne, and which I found quite odd. You see, when George kind of tried to spill the beans to do with that yacht back in the day, I can't remember, you know, that story, what it was all about. But I was quite curious as to how George had decided to pee off Rothschild, Nathaniel Rothschild. I called him Nat in the day. Right. When Nat clearly has a lot of secrets that he could expose Osborne. Right. In. But I'm just putting it out there. That's where it was. That's where it was held. Right. And that's
well, do you know, it's been really interesting because the responses to you coming on, people think you're incredibly brave. People are very worried about your safety, I have to say. Because it's not unusual people suddenly disappear after they said something,
you know what,
I'm
hardly a bloody risk to the country. It's ridiculous.
Well, but what you are saying is that you are clearly showing the hypocrisy in our establishment. That's what you're clearly showing. And also, I mean, you've actually come on here today and you know, you've named our Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Well, to me, he's not the Chancellor, he's George. It was on all fours back in the day.
George on all fours. I don't know how you follow that.
I'm not fazed by Osborne in the least. I remember him in a completely different way.
Right, I bet you do.
And the rest of them. They're like little boys.
It's really funny. They say, don't they? And that is, if you're stood up and you're giving a speech, I always imagine people naked.
He's playing a merry dance with me now as we speak. Right. That's what he's doing. He's getting his rocks off. You know,
do you feel that?
Well, yes, he's having that same slave mistress thing with me. Right. I'll peer off, see what she does. She'll come back. Bottom line is, he's still going to be George to me, little old George, baby George, with his mistress, and that's it. He's not the Chancellor, in my word. In fact, William Sinclair, my son's father, would have been a better Chancellor, more educated, more classy. Right. And William, by the way, who George tried to throw under the bus by saying, oh, back in the day, William was a drug addict and he tried to save him. George didn't do diddly at all. Christopher Coleridge is the one that tried to help my William Sinclair. Right. George used William Sinclair just to cover up his dirty past. And the good news is that, what George needs to be careful about is that William could and can still spill the beans on George and what he got up to. This drug addict, as George wants to call him, has been the most loyal person for George Osborne.
Let me ask you one more thing.
And George has been disloyal to him.
Well, you kind of started the show with me and you're ending the show with me, so I want to ask you one more thing. What do you hope to get out of sitting here today and just saying it as it is.
What I want is for the government and the establishment to know is that when you decide that if you commit something in the past, whatever it may be, for me, if George is in government and he's not being honest, he's trying to slander me and he's lying. And what he's trying to, for me, why should you trust somebody that is capable of lying and cheating and covering up? Because had he been, I would have respected him, and this probably would have gone away and we've never heard of Osborne again as far as my life was concerned, had he told the truth in the beginning. The bottom line is he's lied about William Sinclair, he's lied about me, and he's covering his tracks. And I think George Osborne, what lengths will he go to cover up his murky past? Or what if something else is going on in his life? What will he do to cover that up?
Well, you know, what can I say? You know, thanks, Natalie. Thanks for coming back in again. And that's what People's Voice is really about. We are that live. If somebody's got something to say, well, they just come back into the studio. Thank you for joining us. I don't claim for it to have been perfect, but we gave it our best shot. Please join us again tomorrow. Lovely. Thank you so much.